Hello and welcome to this World Suicide Prevention Day special edition of Mental Health Monday, the podcast which has been running since January 2017. More than 200 episodes so far, and a really special one for you today. To mark World Suicide Prevention Day, a group of individuals, headed up by myself, headed down to Crosby Beach on Merseyside. There is the Another Place exhibition, a series of statues, the Iron Men, by the artist and creator Anthony Gormley, a real iconic piece of art. The idea that I had that I wanted to bring to life, and thankfully was able to do so courtesy of these incredible gentlemen, was to recreate these statues but with real life Iron Men. The guys who were sharing their stories, talking about mental health and really putting themselves out there when it comes to their own suicide stories. These guys have been to some really dark places, so I'm absolutely delighted they were here to share their stories for this week's Mental Health Monday. And hello and welcome to a special edition of Mental Health Monday. We're being broadcast as a special live edition today for World Suicide Prevention Day. Now, suicide is often a difficult conversation to talk about, but the stats are pretty stark. Every week in the UK, 100 people die by suicide. It's one of our biggest killers, but in fact, 1 in 5 of us at some point in our lives will experience suicidal thoughts. Today, we're gathering men who've gone through experiences of feeling suicidal, come through the other side, who've chosen life, who've chosen hope, and through conversations like this today are trying to save more lives and continue to spread a really positive message around mental health. Welcome to a live edition of Mental Health Monday. Yay! Right, we're going to start with our first Iron Man. Now, Jake Mills was one of the very first people we ever spoke to on Mental Health Monday about suicidal thoughts and feelings. At the time, it was a really taboo subject to be having, but right from the off, Jake, how comfortable you were with sharing your story made me feel comfortable asking you questions about it. And people like yourself and this generation of guys that we're talking about are trailblazers in many ways, because the generation before often weren't having this sort of conversation.
Yeah, we get asked a lot. What's the difference, and are we seeing a difference? And this is the difference. Look at the people who are coming together to not only openly talk about this type of thing, but to use their experience, either of what they've gone through themselves, what somebody else has gone through, to create something from a place of loss, from hurt, from turmoil, to make a difference for other people. And I think if you look back over the last 5-10 years, this is the difference, and this is why we're going to reduce the number of suicides. This is why we're going to reduce the amount of people who are struggling needlessly, because of this people power. And it's an amazing thing to see everyone back together again to want to do something positive.
And in terms of that journey that you're on, and everyone's on a journey with their own mental health, can you place yourself back in that time? Do you often or ever reconsider how you were feeling in those dark moments?
If I'm going to give an honest answer, not really. Partly because I don't really want to, and partly because I can't actually remember, because I've almost boxed that away. But the biggest difference is that I've been there before, and I now hopefully can know how to prevent myself from being there again. I can notice signs. I can notice how I'm feeling when my mood or my health is dropping, and know more now about my mind and my body to understand what I can do at a preventative stage, and being able to hopefully prevent myself from being at that stage again. And people will say, we talk about, you hear about weakness a lot of the time. People talk about saying that you're weak for struggling, for being unwell. And I can tell you absolutely, without any doubt in my mind, that I'm a stronger person because of what I went through and because of speaking out about it. So the weakness is non-existent for me. It was a strength, and it's a strength that I've taken on the rest of my life.
That's good. I think that deserves a round of applause. I think absolutely. Jake Mills is now CEO of Chasing the Stigma. And the reason I asked you about that feeling, Jake, is I guess there will be guys maybe listening to this now who are in that place, who can't see what you've just described, who can't see strength from weakness, or can't see a pathway forward. But we've got to find ways of inspiring those individuals, haven't we, to seek that hope, to seek that new clarity that gives them a positive future instead of that tragic future.
It is. I think there's a couple of things there. First of all, no matter how dark it might seem, no matter how impossible it might seem, because when I was in that moment, when I was what I thought beyond any hope, I could have thought about it for a million years, on trying to work out and to plan how I could ever get through that, and I could never have found a solution. I could never have found an answer, because I just didn't know. I just couldn't ever imagine being better. And what I would say is that no matter how dark it seems, even if you can't see that glimmer of light, just believe it is there. And to everybody else around that person, to everybody who's here today, this is what we all do now, is we offer that glimmer of hope. We offer that glimmer of light to those who can't see it. So if you can't see it, that is okay, but just believe it is there. And to everybody else who can be that support to them, you can give them that glimmer of hope to get through to tomorrow.
Now let's bring Dan into the conversation. Dan, you and I spoke just over a year ago for the first time about your own experiences, and it was some of the work you did through James's place that brought you to the spot where we are today. We stood on Crosby Beach on Merseyside. We stood with the Iron Men, and indeed you're one of our Iron Men as well. The journey you've been on in a relatively short space of time is a profound one, and I guess we've got to maybe explain to some guys that there is a journey in our, mental health. It's not about getting to the age of 25 or 35 or 44 or 50, whatever age, and suddenly thinking, well, this is me, nothing will ever change. Things can change, things will change in the future, but you've got to find that way of making it change, if you like.
Yeah, we're all on a journey, and change is an important word, because I see a lot of topics around now about winning at mental health, defeating mental health, and it's one of the things that I bring up regularly, is that this is an ongoing thing for all of us for the rest of our lives, and today you might feel great, tomorrow you might not, and that's absolutely okay. And it's about ensuring that your journey takes you to places where you can learn better mechanisms, you can cope better, you can realise the signs, and you can find ways in which you can take a certain ownership of them, and you can get the help you need when you need it. And like Jake says, I couldn't champion it anymore. It's so inspiring to see the amount of services that are here today for ourselves, but for people who are going to be and are in that situation both now and in the future, and it gives me so much hope for the Merseyside borough and also beyond.
Absolutely, and I guess then we'll meet some of those organisations who are here today as well and hear about the incredible work that they do, the life-saving work that they do. But those interventions are so crucial. But I guess as guys, we have a duty, don't we, to almost spot in our own friends where those interventions might be possible, how we can make a connection with an organisation. It may be some social prescription service. It might be about a conversation in the pub. It might be a conversation at the footy. But we've all got to be equipped with the ability to have those conversations, haven't we? Otherwise, they pass us by, and we're left ruining a missed opportunity years down the line.
Mick, one thing I always say is that when I was on my journey, when I first went to James's place, I had a massive stigma around the word suicide. I couldn't allow myself to think of it anything other than the concept of taking my own life. I didn't know about suicidal thoughts, suicidal behaviours, suicidal feelings. I just completely associated it to one thing. And it wasn't until I got into a space like James's place and I saw that there was the ability to be asked whether I'm suicidal, and that felt like such a wall that came down. And I think for people, if you're talking about people who are worried about others, maybe little things like that go such a long way. Asking someone whether they feel suicidal will not put the idea into their heads, but there's that concept is around that it might do, and it may well do. And education is so crucial, and like I said, at James's place, it's very important for us to create an environment where men feel safe and feel comfortable to be in, but also to pass on that education around suicide and what it means in a more generic sense and broad sense.
Now that you're on the other side of things, do you almost feel like some of the things you've learned are almost obvious? There's a very human, I think, connection that organisations like James's Place make with people, which, if you don't consider it or you've never been in those sorts of places, you ought to have made those connections, and the people are specifically skilled to explain a situation to an individual in a way that they understand without the psychology background or that sort of psychiatric or medical background that some places might offer.
Yeah, I think so, but just touching on what Jake said before, I would never try or profess to put myself in anyone else's shoes, but the one thing I can relate to is that it can be so hard just to make that initial step. And it was for me, it took a hell of a long time to do that, and it wasn't until I did that I was able to then learn a little bit more about myself, but also about the services that are available, and suicidality and the concept of suicide in a more broad and generic sense. But I understand how hard it is when you're feeling that low to do anything that feels like you're helping yourself in any way, in some form. It's the biggest step you will take in your life in many senses. And yeah, I've sort of gone full circle now, and I can see the other side. For us, it's amazing to see that our second year evaluation is out soon, and for the second year running, we are able to clinically prove, statistically prove, that our service decreases the risk of suicidality in the men that have our intervention. And as someone who has gone on that entire journey, I can see that entire process. So, journey is such an important word, and everyone's on their own, but if anyone's listening to this and does feel like you are in that place, then I hope there's some inspiration here to say that one initial step can just open up so much.
Absolutely. Dan, talking about James's place there. Now, there are services right across the UK. You can find them on the Hub of Hope, hubofhope.co.uk. If you are aware of somebody who needs to speak to somebody in the case of an emergency, somebody's thinking about taking their own life, 999 is the number to call. In the meantime, if that's not an emergency situation, you can speak to a GP. You can also call the Samaritans on 116 123. You can text SHOUT to 85258 and you'll get a response from a trained volunteer there as well. There are lots of great services out there. When Dan was speaking, it reminded me of a conversation I had with Tom Davis, who's with us. Tom, great to see you again. Thank you for coming on. That journey to suicidal thoughts, you've spoken about this openly in the past in a really sort of, I think, a profound way that connected with me, that suicide for you came up as an option because you'd looked at everything else and there was no other solution. So, suicide, well, maybe that is the option. And the brain has a way, doesn't it, of tricking you into believing that this is a positive outcome, or positive and good things will come from suicide, when quite clearly we know the opposite to be true.
Yeah, very much so. I think when you feel like you're out of options or feel like you're stuck and you can't ever envisage things changing at all, then it starts to seem like the only option. For me it made perfect sense, and it started off as a thought, and at first that thought was quite shocking, and I'd say no, and I'd just push that to one side, and then the more I thought it's the same as anything, the more you expose yourself to something shocking, the more okay you get with it, right? So the more I thought about it, it just kind of made sense. And there's a lot about that being trapped, where we need to take action. And that felt to me like the appropriate action.
And it was actually an intervention, wasn't it, from a family member who was actually sort of clinically trained, that actually put you on a different path as well. Do you feel, is lucky the right word, lucky that intervention took place when it did? Because when we talk about people finding a moment where they step away from suicide, that moment came looking for you, if you like. And I guess it's about trying to create more of those opportunities within people's lives where an intervention might take place, that a connection is made that says to someone, are you feeling suicidal? And then an open and honest conversation can come off the back of it.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'm very, very lucky that someone was able to do that for me. And I think that's the aim, isn't it, right? To create this society, this environment where there are people that can start that conversation, because it's a hard conversation for you to start yourself. So if someone can help you to start it and then have the tools to guide you through it, because we talk about talking, we never talk about how hard talking is, and then we never talk about what to do when someone starts talking. People get scared. Suicide is a scary word, it's a scary word for people to say. People avoid saying it, and I think the biggest worry is that you're going to say to your friends, you're going to start this conversation, and this stuff's going to come out and you're not going to be able to deal with it. And that fear sometimes stops people reaching out to do that intervention, So I think, if we can create that's great, but we've got to make sure that people have got the tools and the right places to send people, if you haven't got the tools, then you need to be able to signpost the tools.
Absolutely. And some of those services I mentioned, by the way, are good signposting services. We were talking before about different people who've gone on journeys, and obviously now many mental health a big part of their lives. Phil Bridges with us from the MindMap. Phil, thanks for being part of our Iron Men this evening. It's great to see you as well. Your life has sort of revolved around mental health for good reasons and for bad reasons now. And you've talked openly about your journey as well, and the pathway that you've been on as well.
I don't want to sort of overemphasize, if you like, the strength that these guys are showing and people like yourself are showing, because generations before, didn't openly speak like this, and yet generations now are making it very much a part of their lives.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think awareness campaigns such as this are so important. I spent my 20s bottling up OCD and anxiety, and had I been more comfortable talking about it, I think I would have saved years of feeling unwell. All of these organisations here today are helping people to open up and get help, and it's really positive. Once I opened up personally and was able to bring counselling, medication, exercise and good sleep hygiene into my life, I then had the desire and sort of confidence, if you like, to set up the MindMap, and we're now able to help people ourselves through counselling, training and signposting. I urge anyone struggling to take the first steps and feeling better, which is talking. Either see a family, friends, a GP, just get that ball rolling, and you wouldn't believe how much your mental health can improve with the right support.
Absolutely, and it's still a very personal journey and a personal story, and I know how sort of invested you are from a personal point of view as well. You must be very proud of how far you've come and the support you're now able to offer other people.
I am, yeah. I'm proud, and I'm grateful that I'm allowed to live my life with such purpose, and it's never hard to get out of bed each day when you're working on something which means so much to you. So yeah, I love the MindMap, and I love working in this space.
Let's bring Jay Wheeler into the conversation. Jay, we just spoke just a few weeks ago on the podcast. Actually, people can check out that episode. So it's great to see you today. We're here looking out to the incredible Irish Sea. We've got this beautiful day. We've recreated the Ironman statues as well in images that people can see both on the website and on our social media as well. And I know sort of you think artistically now because you do your love tag, your graffiti work as well. So from that guy who has spoken to us before about being afraid to leave the house, not wanting to leave the house, to be out in this open environment now with big groups of people sharing their story. I noticed there was a love tag as well, which appeared just down the road as well. That's quite the journey that you've been on, right?
Yeah, it has. I think 6 months after I came back from Afghanistan was when the depression sort of kind of started to hit me, and because I kind of saw a lot of people lose their life out there, I started to feel quite guilty for actually coming back alive, because there was a lot of younger guys, boys and girls, that came back home in a box, and I found that hard to really deal with. I lost within those 6 months. I ruined quite a few friendships, and I was just really negative towards myself and society itself, and it went from anger to just not wanting to be a part of life itself. And the fact that I spent 15 years in the army, you kind of almost, if you're going to stereotype me, you'd almost kind of think, well, he's a man's man, this, that and the other. But when depression got me, I just became useless. I just didn't love myself at all. The amount of times that I ended up in a psychiatric hospital over a period of 2 years was like 5 times. On one time I got admitted to Broad Oak Psychiatric Unit, and I was in there for a couple of months, and the people that run the OT department, they said, look, get you down to the OT department, do some artwork. So I was like, I don't even want to be alive. I don't want to be in this hospital, let alone pick up some paintbrush, and all that. And it took me a couple of weeks, or it took them a couple of weeks to keep encouraging me to take it up. And then one day I just said, I'm going to try and draw back some self-love, and I wanted to base the artwork on something that's really important, and which I felt that I'd seen a lack of, throughout my career in the army.
And it was a connection. It was a knock on the door from SAFA, and I mentioned the organisations before, and actually some organisations will be suitable for specific people as well. And just give us just briefly on SAFA as well. It made a big difference. That made connections, that went into the apartment, that got things moved, and helped you move on to a different stage in your life.
The amazing thing was, I say it's amazing because it was a negative, but it turned out to be a positive. So someone managed to get access to the apartment block where I live, and what I do, and I've been doing it ever since I came back from Afghanistan, I collect toy memorabilia based on the A-Team TV show, because it was a really nice part of my childhood, a happy part, and I wanted to get some happiness back when I came back from Afghanistan because I didn't have any. And whoever went into my apartment had taken some of these like toys that are on card and, you know, really old toys. And then that was the moment that I said, look, I'm going to have to phone the police. And I knew that as soon as I made that call to the police, then someone else is going to find out how I'm living. Fantastic guys, they secured my door. Then they left, and unknown to me, what they'd done when they went back to the station is that they got in touch with Safa. A guy called Bill Hunt phoned me, and he says, I want to come and see you. And I says, yeah. So he came down like the next day, and he came in, and he saw all the madness, and he sat on the couch with me, and he said, right, he said, do you want to continue to live like this, or do you want to change it and do something more positive? And I said, you did a fight thing instead of the flight thing. And my friend had said to me, you know, like for most of your life you've been fighting for other people. Why don't you fight for yourself? And then that kind of just struck a chord, and I went, all right. And we got about £5,000 in funding, and he said to me, right, we'll get paint, we'll do, because I sprayed all these derogatory things about myself on the wall, and he said, look, we'll get a painter and decorator in. And I was like, I said, no, I said, I created this mess, I want to put it right. And it took a long time. It took, you know, I would say basically it's probably taken about 5 years to be where I am now.
Absolutely,
you know.
absolutely. What about that honesty from Jay? A bit of a round of applause there. So many conversations. So this is going to be this week's edition of Mental Health Monday. Next week's edition, we're going to be speaking to some more of the fabulous organisations that are around here and around the Merseyside region who are making connections with these brilliant individuals. But what about those stories? What about that honesty? It's all about making those connections however we do it. There's 1,001 different websites that are out there. I'll put as many as I can in the information for the podcast. As I mentioned before, if you know someone in immediate danger, 999 is the number to call. The Samaritans number never changes, 116 123. You can text SHOUT to 85258. That'll put you in touch with a volunteer. If you want to find organisations within your local community, organisations like James's Place that we heard about before, Hub of Hope, hubofhope.co.uk, anywhere in the UK, we'll find that. Uses the location on your device or it uses your postcode. Did I get everything there? I think we got everything there. What about that? A round of applause for our Iron Men. I've been Mick Coyle. Don't forget Mental Health Monday. Every Monday, check out the podcast.
And what about that? It was a really emotional time, actually, down at Crosby Beach. It was a really incredible occasion, too. The sun was glorious. This beautiful sunset with many people who came down. Thank you to everybody who supported the event. Don't forget, if you're aware of people who are there who you've not heard from yet, next week's podcast, which comes out this coming Monday, is part 2 of our Iron Men special. And we'll be hearing from some more of those incredible stories and hearing from some more of our Iron Men.